All right, guys, this week we're going to talk a little bit about ebooks and digital books. All right, and we're going to talk about some of the copyright issues we have. So, related to the general theme of intellectual property is the issue of new publishing formats for books and the availability of these books on the internet. Several ethical and social questions have arisen as digital books and ebooks, the digital version of the books for sale online through distributors like Amazon, became more common. Can selected and extended excerpt, it's supposed to be excerpts, sorry, from books be made digitally available without violating copyrights or the moral rights of authors? So in this situation, and I'm sure all of you, well, hopefully all of you at some point, have looked at online, whether it's Amazon or any of these other websites that offer these books you can purchase. They'll give you an excerpt. Now, the question here is even showing an excerpt, is that something that is a violation of copyright, or is it not? Unfortunately, the future of both digital books and ebooks has been clouded to some extent by copyright claims and other legal issues that involve major internet companies like Google, Apple, and Amazon. Yes, the trinity of evil there, guys. Okay, Google's book project, in keeping with its mission to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful, Google launched its ambitious digital books project. So if any of you, I don't know if you guys have ever went to Google Books, but Google Books is a website, launched by Google, which has digitized millions and millions of books. And you can go there, and some books, if they're in the public domain or what have you, you can read the whole book. So the plan was to create a vast library of digital books. Some books would be reproduced in their entirety, like I was saying, while others, only a portion of the book would be digitized. Users who located a specific book through a Google search could examine its table of contents and some of its actual content, which is very helpful to be able to look at the table of contents. Kind of gives you kind of an overview of what the book's about. Links to online booksellers would be provided so that the users could purchase the book in its print or electronic form. By 2013, Google had digitized over 20 million volumes. So this project, however, was met with formidable opposition from American and European book publishers. In France, Google was sued for violating the moral rights of authors. When Germans followed France's example with their own lawsuits, books from France and Germany were removed from the project. In the United States, Google had reached a settlement with authors and publishers, but that settlement was rejected by Judge Chin in 2011. However, in 2013, a new decision by Judge Chin allowed Google to continue its digitizing of books and to show small portions online of Google Books, unless the book was in the public domain. So I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I've noticed this myself. Google Books, many years ago, over 10 years ago, you used to access a larger percentage of the text that were on there, the entirety. Now there's a much a smaller percentage of books that are digitized in its entirety, and that's because of this lawsuit. So you can access pretty much most of these books, you just can't read them in their entirety. So ebooks have raised some contentious problems and particularly troublesome issues in recent years as to the pricing. How do you price these ebooks and the obstruction of the digital distribution? So I want you guys to kind of think to yourself about this question. What's the best way to reward authors for their creative work and compensate publishers? And how can these books be priced and sold in a way that will encourage the development and creative new works like ebooks with video, audio, and web links that will benefit both authors and consumers alike? So remember, there has to be some profit motive, right? If an individual is writing books, they have to have some sort of stable income in order to be able to do that. And likewise, a publisher has to have some sort of financed foundation from which they can distribute and edit and all of that sort of thing, these texts, these books that are created. So there has to be some sort of financial incentive. So Apple decided to sell ebooks in 2010, and it created iBookstore. But Apple, which chose a different approach to pricing its books, was soon accused of price fixing and found liable for violating U.S. antitrust laws. So how Apple had decided to price its books, what it did is it went with book publishers, right? and they would determine what the price of these books were. Now that is seen as price fixing, because what they're doing is they're choosing a particular publisher, and they're colluding with them against other publishers that are not in agreement with Apple. They don't have, financial agreement, and they're not reproducing their books. So Apple, to sell ebooks, had made these collusions with these publishers, and they priced the books. But the problem is, because of this collusion, they could overprice them because they're a monopoly in a sense. But in order to understand these issues, we must discuss the basics of these two models. Amazon first entered the nascent ebook market in 2007. The major book publishers, such as HarperCollins and Random House, licensed Amazon to distribute their books according to the terms of the so-called wholesale model. According to this model, the retailer pays a wholesale price for the book and then sets its own retail price. So here, what Amazon did, unlike setting the price of ebooks with the publisher that Apple did, what they did is they bought the books wholesale and they set their own prices. Now, the result of this was that Amazon took a pay cut for a while because they priced the ebooks under the market value. So they were actually making less money. They were actually losing money on the sale of ebooks. But what that did was that consolidated their market share. They were able to sell more and more and more, to where once they cornered the market of the ebooks, they were able, after a year or so, they could charge whatever they want. So they were collaborating with publishers, right? They were independent of the publishers. They could charge whatever they want because they were buying them wholesale. So the DOJ sued Apple, going back to Apple model, and 5 publishers for fixing the prices of electronic books in violation of antitrust laws. The DOJ cited ample proof of an illegal conspiracy among the publishers, along with Apple's coordination of that conspiracy. In accusing Apple of antitrust violations and branding its actions as uncompetitive, the Justice Department seemed to be implicitly favoring Amazon's wholesale approach. Because Amazon wasn't colluding with the publisher, it was buying it up from any publisher that was willing to sell to them, and then they would just resell that at whatever price they saw fit. So the initial ruling from the court was in the government's favor. A U.S. District Court judge in Manhattan concluded that evidence against Apple was overwhelming. Hence, the company was liable for conspiring with major book publishers to drive up the cost of ebooks. The case was appealed, but the Second Circuit Federal Appeals Court upheld the original decision. In 2016, the U.S. Supreme Court refused to hear Apple's case, and Apple was forced to pay out $500 million, most of it to ebook consumers to find a specific case. Supporters of Apple have argued that Apple's actions actually increased competition by finally constraining Amazon's monopolistic power in the volatile ebook market. So, I want you guys to kind of think about this, just kind of mull this over in your mind. Which one do you prefer? Were authors better served by Apple's arrangement? Do you like their arrangement better? Where you have the publishers, communicating and coordinating with Apple? Or is this an issue of a monopoly? Or do you prefer the one where it's bought wholesale, right? Like Amazon, they buy them wholesale and then they just set the price whatever they want. Do you see either of these as being monopolistic, and which one's better than the other? And is there an alternative model? Now, in class, we often talk about different models, like, for example, like some sort of cloud, kind of like where you purchase it and it's available there, and the prices are set by the market, not set by the collusion of the publisher or by one particular company that is monopolistically purchasing up all of the books and then selling them wholesale. So, it depends on what you see as the best option. One, you have collusion. The other one, you have monopoly, and then possibly a third one where you're distributing those opportunities in the market where you have much smaller companies that are able to compete against each other. So that's what I have for this week. I will see you next week, and you have a good one.